Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I have seen this tag a couple of times and I love the idea. I most recently saw it on Mercy's channel from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and I loved watching it. Like, I was just completely hooked. And so then I ended up watching a ton of other videos of this tag, and it is called the Try a Chapter tag. And basically you're supposed to pick out a few books and then read the first chapter of each book and decide whether or not it's something you want to read right now or how you feel about it, something like that. So I'm going to show you the books I picked out. I think I picked out 6 books because I couldn't decide, and this was definitely a good opportunity to take a dip into a book that I've been avoiding or that I just am not sure. I've had it for so long that I just don't really remember what it's about. And so I picked a really wide variety of genres, and so I'm going to share those with you. The first one is the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I have had this book for I can't even tell you how long and just have not gotten around to it, so I'm going to read the first chapter in this one. Next up is the Mapmaker's War, and I have no idea how I found out about this book, honestly. I know I saw it on somebody's channel on BookTube, and it piqued my interest, so I'm definitely going to read the first chapter of this one. Next up is a nonfiction book, and it's kind of just like a little bit of fascination of mine, and that is Down the Rabbit Hole by Holly Madison. And I have watched all the episodes of The Girls Next Door, so from the moment this came out, I was interested. And then another book that I picked up on a whim in Portland was Backspring by Judith McCormack, and so I'm going to read the first chapter of this. I know I read the first couple of pages maybe before I picked it up just to see how I felt about the writing style, but this one looked really interesting. And then I have Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I read Fangirl recently and I liked it, but the part I didn't like about it was the fan fiction, and since this is kind of the fan fiction as a book, I'm hesitant, so I wanted to read the first chapter to see just how I feel about it, if it feels like something that I'm going to want to read. And then the last one was actually one of my most anticipated books for 2015, and I didn't get my hands on it until the end of the year, and that is I Refuse by Per Petterson. This is a translated book. I don't remember what the original language was, but it's translated from Norwegian by Dawn Bartlett. And this one just really interested me last year, and it's been so long since I put it on my most anticipated reads list that I wanted to read the first chapter to see if I still find it as intriguing as I did then. So I am going to go start reading these, and I will come back and check in once I have read a chapter of one of them. I'll come back and then tell you how I felt about it and continue that until I've read a chapter of each one of them. I'm snuggled down in my pajamas and I am ready for reading. The first book that I decided to pick up was Down the Rabbit Hole by Holly Madison, and I ended up reading the author's note and the prologue because that was about 10 pages, and to add the first chapter on top of that would have been an awful lot to read. And I'm very intrigued. I always really liked Holly, and so her tone in this is very interesting, and I think so far that the writing is pretty good, and I definitely want to continue reading this, but I don't know if it's what I want to pick up right now. I did find myself a couple times being like, okay, let's move on, but in the prologue, she talks about when she was a child and how she idolized Marilyn Monroe and always thought that she wanted that lifestyle. And then she jumps forward to talk about the time in her life when she almost committed suicide because she was so miserable living in the mansion, and just sort of how those two times in her life are so vastly different. And it was very interesting, and I definitely want to read this at some point. Alright, up next was the Mapmaker's War, and This one was strange. I don't know if it's second person where they just keep saying you, like it's directed at you. I found that a little weird and uncomfortable to like read it that way. I don't know, I'm just not used to it. But basically it's about a girl who, as a child, she just is always drawing maps, like creating maps of just like the woods or her backyard, things like that. And the young prince is like enamored with her. And then as she starts to get older, she uses that to her advantage so that she can become the mapmaker's apprentice and then the mapmaker to the king. And that all happens in the first 9 pages. It doesn't really have chapters, so I just read to the first little break in the story. So this is interesting. My interest is piqued because I really just don't know what's going on except that she makes maps. I know this is the first book in a series, so I Refuse by Per Petterson. This really intrigued me. So we are following this guy named Jim who he's driving somewhere in the early hours of the morning. He almost hits somebody as he's crossing the street. We don't really get any more information about that, but because it starts out that way, I assume that that is somewhat relevant in on down the line. But then he's fishing on this bridge and he comes into contact with this man who drives up in a Mercedes and rolls his window down and calls him by name. And then they continue to have a conversation alluding to the fact that they knew each other, and they are talking about how, or the guy in the Mercedes is talking about how different things are, how surprising how they turned out, you there and me here, and we don't really know much about it, about why they know each other or what their relationship is. And then when the guy drives off, Jim, our main character, packs up his stuff and goes to his car and cries, and then goes home, and there's a mysterious woman in his bedroom, even though he says he lives alone. So that's where the first chapter ended. A lot of things happened, and I am just really, really intrigued. This one definitely is high on the priority list, so yeah, we'll see. I read the first chapter of Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, and I actually quite enjoyed it. It's just sort of a little look at the main character, Simon, and just some of the relationships he has with the other characters. And they're touched on in Fangirl, so I was already familiar with who some of them were. So didn't need a whole lot of explaining. But yeah, it was a really short chapter, so I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I did enjoy it, so I think that that's a good sign for maybe me enjoying reading this down the line, but so far, not my favorite. Alright, so I did end up reading the first chapter of the Poisonwood Bible, and I'm really intrigued by the way it's written. I don't know what I expected from this, but I really like where this is going. It starts out in, I guess it's the present day, and it's the mother from the family that I'm assuming is a American family who goes to Africa as missionaries. And so the wife and mother is the storyteller, and she alludes to some kind of crazy things happening to her family while they are in Africa, and just sort of talks about how people have sail through life with snow white consciences and don't think about the things that are going on in countries like Africa. So this is really interesting to me, and I'm glad that I did read the first chapter because I'm definitely encouraged to pick this up, whereas I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And so I think I might end up reading this really soon. And the last one I read was Backspring, and this cover is just gorgeous, which was half the reason why I picked it up to look at it when I was at Powell's. This might win because the writing in this is just gorgeous. Like, she is a fantastic writer, Judith McCormack, and it's basically, the beginning is we're following this man who is an architect, and he's going to a meeting at this farmer's market because the owner wants him to design, he likes his work, and I think he wants him to redesign the market or something like that. And so he's wandering around the market, and just the way she describes the market and the people there is really, really fascinating and intriguing. And then something happens and the market catches on fire, and it's just like the imagery was just so fantastic, and the way that she just described things. And then at the end of the chapter, she's describing like when the roof falls in and all the food and stuff inside burning, the way that she explains that, and just like the visual and like sensual imagery, I don't know if that's the right word, is just incredible. And I was so hooked, and I think this is the one that I'm going to end up picking up because it was just so good. The other ones that that I sort of leaned towards were Poisonwood Bible and I Refuse. And I think in order of my interest at the moment, it would be Backspring, I Refuse, the Poisonwood Bible, and then probably Down the Rabbit Hole, Carry On, and Mapmaker's War, because I wasn't so interested in the other three. I read enough to think that I would be interested down the line. Mapmaker's War was just sort of odd and just did not pique my interest, but this one, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to read this. So I'm probably going to continue on from where I am. And it was actually the longest first chapter. It was 26 pages. All the rest of them were a lot shorter. But yeah, this is the winner. So I hope you enjoyed that. I just think this is such an interesting concept for picking another book, and I'm glad that I did it. And I definitely will do this again with other books. I have plenty of books on my shelf that I have either been avoiding or that I just don't remember anything about. So this has been definitely a good way to remember something about the book and to also get a taste of the writing style and the way things are described and characters and stuff like that. So I'm definitely a fan of this tag. I will leave links to Mercy's video and to the original video. I'm sorry, I can't remember who the video was by, but I will leave a link to her video below as well. And if you guys do this, I would love to watch your videos, hear your thoughts on books that you've read the first chapter of. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!